Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Beard of Darkness Book Reviews. I'm glad to be back. It's been a little bit since I've done it live. I am so proud to say I'm here with, once again, for the second time, I'm proud to say that I'm bragging, with Christopher Ruocchio, man. How you doing tonight, brother?
I'm doing well, man. It's good to see you again. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, come on. Also, dude, it's so fun to talk to you because, look, you are the guy that, when I started reading Empire of Silence, I didn't know what to expect because it wasn't my first sci-fi fantasy, but it was like my second, literally.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah. So my imagination, not being a reader as a young man and kind of falling that into 29, I'm now 34, was an experience that I'm so epically glad that I had. And that's all due to you, man. So what's been going on with you? For those who aren't familiar with you, tell a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Christopher Ruocchio. I'm the author of the Sun Eater science fantasy series, I like to say, which is from Doll Books. 7 books, working on the last one now. Be out next year. And it's sort of like I said, it's a space opera in the tradition of Dune and of Star Wars. It's set like 20,000 years in our future. The main character is a nobleman named Hadrian who runs away from home, and he gets stuck in the middle of a war between the human empire and the first aliens who've ever really posed a threat to it. He tells us page 1, he's the guy who went to that war and dealt with the aliens. And his story is why and how and about all the things that didn't make it into the official record. Yeah, that's me. I've been doing that. I've written 6 books, 3 novellas, about 25 short stories. Did a one-off for Marvel Comics once. That was fun. But almost everything I've written, with a couple exceptions, has been inside of your universe. Yeah, that's me.
That's first off, I have to say, man, as somebody who wants to write, and I know so many writers who have this vision of what they want to do, real quick, it doesn't have to be quick. Just what is it like, man, just being able to say, 98% of what I've written, is wanted enough for me to have the opportunity to write within this world that I've created. And I know from the last time we talked, kind of young, you came to this story came to you.
Yeah, in pieces, It's cool. It's cool. This is the only thing I knew I wanted to do, right, my whole life. And so I didn't realize that it was like kind of a long shot, right? Like this, it's like, I went to all these, went to high school, all these kids were like, yeah, I'm gonna be in the NBA, man. I'm like, no, you're not, right? But like, I was hitting a target that was maybe only a little bit harder to hit, right? And I never really thought about that at all. And it's worked out, which is nice, right? My wife quit her job earlier this year, which like a lot of writers can't say, right? So like that's cool, yeah, and to do it all more or less all with my own stuff, right? The one Thor story notwithstanding, like everything I've written has been mine and for me is extra cool, Not that there's anything wrong with writing for other people, but.
No, you did not give that kind of vibe out at all. But I think that I'm glad that you touched on your wife and her quitting her job, because I know and I'm not very far on the comments yet, guys. I've still got a bunch to go since you've logged on here. But I know a lot of people, even just in the comments, or who will watch this, as we keep going or on replay, that's kind of the dream, Hey,
Sure.
babe, and I know you got a young one. And
Yeah.
Hey, I've got this, and this is the dream. So, man, that's so cool that you come on here and talk in so much too. You talk to so many people, and I love that about you. I tell people all the time, one of my favorite things about Christopher Ruocchio is that I don't know if he knows the word no, because he talks to the people who want to talk to him. And I think that is a trait that a lot of authors have, but I think you especially share with the community in such a wonderful way, man. You are a giving author.
Well, thanks. I had this. I have a rule, right? I try not. I have not so far said no to an interview, and I really don't want to have to. Right? Don't care who it is. Right? Maybe like even interview people be like, really, you're gonna talk to that guy? Like, you sure? Right? Because it feels bad, right? Now, like if I don't have time, or if like something like clashes with the schedule or something, I might have to put it off. But like I've always said yes. Right. Even if I had to wait like, a while or something. Right. And I think sort of cynically, right, I think that's actually been part of what's helped. Right. I think that having my face on so many darn thumbnails, right, has sort
Yes.
of over the last few years, and that's that's sort of done it, right? Because like books are like a time precious sort of thing, right? Like it takes a lot of time we're working on book 7 now for more than a year. I started on November 11 last year, so this is the longest I've been on any single project, which like it's too long. It hurts.
Which is crazy if anybody knows the size of your books, dude, and how often you put them out.
Yeah, sure. But I used to be like, it used to be like 9 months and done. And the longer any of these projects go on, like the harder it is to, sort of keep up with everything. So like it's getting painful. And but like it doesn't matter, right? Like no matter, like I could be writing a book that's a third the size, and it would still take months to get a book out to market, right? And that's a lot more time than a YouTube video or a TikTok or an indie published novel, right? The machines of indie publishing, like no knock on indie publishing, right? This is an advantage they have, is they can pivot on a dime and put this stuff out. And so I need to do other stuff, and interview is another stuff, right? So like it's all part of the job, right?
You do that very well. There's lots of, and this was one of the things that was I came into this game, and when I say game, like interviewing authors such as yourself and indie authors and stuff, kind of unaware that when you're a published author, you still have to market yourself in this current modern market. Yeah. It's not just like, hey, it's not like a movie, right, where there's commercials and this and that. You have to put the work in, and that is kind of the epitome of what I'm saying when, man, I love that about you, and you put the work in, and it's evident, man. You're there with the short stories. Your Patreon's amazing. You're coming out with these trading cards I just seen. And with your different tiers, you offer wonderful things. So I love that, man. And in your fans as well. It's like, hey, I'm interested and so enthralled within this series. And that author is here on a personal level to give back. And I think that is where you shine.
Yeah, well, thanks, man. It's been, there's no wrong way to do it, right? To like be a working author, right? Except the ways that don't, get people to read your books, right? Like there's there are lots of different things to try, and I've been trying different things, and some of the stuff I've tried hasn't worked out, it wasn't really until we started sort of beefing up the trading card thing with the Patreon really took off. Like membership was pretty static for the last several years. So this was finally the thing that like made that work in a way that it hadn't before, but like it's like anything, I talk about querying agents, right? Like I would have to change my pitch all the time. Like it's like in a job, right? You like, oh man, people have not responded to my cover letter. Like I should write a new one, right? And you just keep changing things until something works, right? But the reality is there are no absolute walls, right? Like you can, you just don't have the right tools to undermine them or blow them up or climb over them, right? You got to figure out like what siege equipment you need, right? It's just
the author to kind of make his own rules, right?
Yeah, you gotta change, and this is true of like life, period, right? Like, there are very few like absolute, walls, right? I'm trying to think of an example, but like, you can. You depending on what your own limitations are, of course, right? But you can make something work if you just keep hitting your head against whatever it is you're trying to do.
People have a good sense too of other humans. It's like I am spoken to or I gain inspiration from this, and it's almost one of those things we feel instead of see. It's like a sense. So I love it, man. I love everything that you're doing, and I just want to let you know that. And I know so many other people do too. So, so we'll go into this. We don't have to go too deep yet. So what have you been doing kind of currently? And then we'll go into the special editions and stuff.
Yeah. No. Well lost the connection there for a sec, but working on special edition fulfillment mostly. I've been in my garage. This is the diamond.
Those are so nice, man. 1 second. It'll take a second to come back.
Oh, I lose again.
There we go. Awesome. It's shitty weather, so it may do that a few times. It's okay. We'll wait until you get back, man.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, so I've been working on fulfillment for those, and whenever I'm not, I'm either wrangling my 18-month-old or I am working on book 7. It's funny. I was joking with my wife, like these people know every time they ask me where their tracking number is that the book gets a day later, right? Like they know that, right? And it's not quite true, but it's like, man, it's tough. I think I think everybody imagines that there's, staff. Brandon Sanderson has like 40 employees, right? Like I do not. I have Jenna when she feels like it, and like my brother, if I could bribe him to with a pizza to help me pack boxes, right? Like it was mostly me. I had a few people help. Both my brothers did some time. My dad helped a lot actually. But
Just
packing
have to
those
work.
boxes, it was rough. But they're all done. Less the last like couple. I think we have 2 or 3 downstairs from the wait list. We're waiting for people to pay for and get them out the door.
So the Diamond Edition was a Kickstarter.
Yes, yeah.
That I'm so sad I wasn't around in the community. I didn't know about it, but we'll get to what I do have here in a little bit. But that, dude, the absolute beauty of your Diamond Edition. Show it off now that you're back in clear vision.
I'm sorry to cut to this. We could talk about book 7 some too, but so here's the slipcase version, right? Still the one I brought over. The letter edition's back there somewhere. But it's John Barrett Ballaran, who did the covers for my novellas. The last 2 at least, did the jacket design. He did this, right, which is of course it's a sun with some orbits, and we've got something going on here. And then the back's sort of a more stripped down version with number 1. And then cover art was done by James Cook, sort of in a old school Star Wars.
It is style, so beautiful, dude.
He's the man. And then we've got the Marlowe Devil on the boards. And we've got the red page edges too on this one. I'm not a big sprayed edges guy, but it turned out real nice. I know a lot of folks are. And then we've got some end paper here. It's the same front and back on this one. It's also James Cook. He did this Coliseum scene here. And then James did one more piece for us. He did this full color insert here in the front. It's on gloss, so the light's hard to catch.
It's so
Adrian Belk getting on ship at the end. I won't say anymore. But then they're all signed, and my copies say Alpha Omega on them, but everyone else will have a number. I'm getting a little full of myself, I suppose. I just thought it'd be funny. It was they're all numbered or lettered, so I figured I'd give myself the Greek. So they turned out. And then these ones. So we'll just do the special edition talk, I guess, since we're already here. So there are 3, right? There's Diamond Editions, there's Broken Bindings, which I've got the Broken Binding copy right here. We can look at it in a second, but and then there's Anderida Books is doing their version of Empire of Silence next year. I've been working with Anderida.
Who's the third?
Anderida, Anderida Books. They're smaller. He's been with me since the beginning. He did a short run signed edition of all the UK hardcovers on release over there. So literally day 1, Rob and I have been working together. But you can think of them sort of like Pokemon, right? Red version, blue version, yellow, right? They've all got a little bit of something different to them. They're all the same book functionally, right? But they got different art. The Diamond Edition has they all have new introductions, right? But instead of doing the normal author thing and writing introductions, like yes, I'm very happy with this book. I was in my salad days when I wrote it. Blah blah blah. Right? I hate those. They're all actually basically short stories, but they're documents from the universe talking about Hadrian and talking about the books, because the books exist in universe, right? So that's a nice little spin. They've all got a different one, which was a little bit extra of me. And I kind of regretted it, but I did it. I had to write them all like back to back. It's partly why book 7 has taken longer than the other ones. It took like 2 months off to write all of those, because Broken Binding did 3 books at once. I only brought book 1 out.
I got you.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. Yeah.
I was so happy. Because lots of people are waiting on the second print, which is a go, right?
It is a go. Yeah. It is happening. But they're all a little bit different. So the Diamond Edition has, in addition to a new intro, it's got a story in the back that's from Sandra Lynn's point of view. It's set after book 1, but
no way,
but before book 2. And the Andorita edition has a different story of its own. But the Broken Binding, I couldn't write 3 short stories for them fast enough. They want to do all 3, so there are no stories in those. It's just the new intro. Those are a lot shorter.
I noticed it. I didn't know about it until I started to read again Empire Science. I was like, hold on, something's different here.
Yeah. We added a little something extra, and then the Diamond Edition's got a bunch of black and white art in it. On the inside, it's done by Terrence Fiddler. He did 11 pieces for us, so this is sort of from the end.
11.
There's 11 black and white inserts.
That's a lot, guys.
You know, the thing about special editions, right, is like new materials are nice, but unless you're, and I use this term affectionately, like a real turbo nerd, right? Paper quality doesn't matter that much to people as long as it's good, right? So we used like 60, I can't remember the technical term. We used the same paper that the Brandon Sanderson books are on, which turned out to be a big problem for us because Brandon Sanderson used all that paper and cost us a few months. So he's my nemesis, affectionately. But I decided that really where the money needed to go with the Diamond Edition was into art, because that's the thing, like that's what people want to see. And so we did that, and not that we cheaped out on the materials, but like we didn't we're not Curious King, right? We didn't get Corinthian leather or whatever, right? Love those guys, but but
they're not affordable, dude. Let's just
they are not affordable, right? They're sort of the anti-broken binding in this respect. We wanted to split a nice balance, right? So we've got the faux leather, we got the foil stamping, we got some good paper, right? But we wanted to put the money in the art, and so Taryn did 11 pieces. The Broken Binding edition, so got it here. They're I don't want to say like budget sounds bad, right? But like they're the more affordable special edition option. They did 3,000 of these, and they did books 1, 2,
high quality still though. Quality.
They are no for sure. They
and then like the aspect of Petrick kind of lead. What happens with that relationship with Petrick?
Yeah, so Petrick and I, Petrick like works with them, not for them, but like he does a lot of the art directing. He like talks to the artists, and he's read all the books, right? He's more familiar with all the material than the guys over at Broken Binding necessarily are for everything, right? I don't know. I know Matt reads, right, but I don't know if he's read every single thing that goes through Broken Binding, because they do so much, right? So Petrick was in charge of art direction, and Petrick and I talked basically every day for a few months. We still mostly do, honestly. So there's no interior art in this. It's the same pages that you'd see in the normal UK edition, but they dressed up the outside, right? So the boards on the book have this illustration. It's by Peng Lu here, and then each of the end papers is done by Renee Eigner, and they're different. So there's this one in the front, House Marlowe looking at the troops, and then the back is Sealson Interrogation, and then the jacket is a full wraparound piece.
Yes,
and that turned out really great. This one's special to me because the ship design was actually done by a reader, and he had like a 3D model, and I asked him if I could. This is Joe Madison did this, and I asked him if I could send it to Renee, and Renee rendered it for the cover, which is very, very cool. It was one of the shuttles, and he sent me a lot of messages trying to figure out exactly what I thought the shuttle should look like. So it's about as close as we gotten, and it turned out real great. He was super jazzed about that. And then the insides of the jackets are all their own thing, so it's just book 1, but they're all sort of Roman looking friezes, kind of like modernized Roman friezes, right? I was inspired by this old edition of Gibbon's Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, where the spines are crumbling pillars. And so as the series goes on, you'll notice the spines start to collapse. The columns on the spines start to collapse, so that when they're all lined up, it'll be like a linear collapse of the spines down to the end of the book, end of the series. And so those are those. And the Andorita ones, we don't have yet. They're not out yet. But Andorita uses a lot of the same sort of materials and like Craftsman over in the UK that Folio does. And so there'll be a little bit material-wise, they'll be a little bit higher quality even than the Diamond Edition. They won't have as much art, but the art will all be done by Kieran Yanner, who does the normal US covers. So we brought Kieran back, and Kieran did full wraparounds for the covers. They're not double-sided or anything, just the one. But then he's doing at least 4 interior plates that'll be full color. and he's doing some little black and white accent pieces as well for like chapter headers and things. So yeah. So they'll all be different. No. What's that?
Is this towards the end of the book?
Yeah, that's the last.
Okay, I just want to
right at the end. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I won't ruin nothing for anybody, but it's so cool to look at a book and understand what the art is showing, man. And until I was, a little bit more versed as a reader, it was something I never noticed, right? And the art is so important for that kind of thing, to recognize, especially this one. Like, I mean, I know where this is coming from. Very, very fun part of the book. Very, very like, what's going to happen? But this right here is like, what do they look like? If anybody's been here at the end of book one, it's like, what do they look like? What does this room look like? And where is this going down? And I think that's a wonderful illustration, and it completed it in my head.
Oh yeah, no, Renee, Renee was a machine. I feel like we almost abused the poor guy. Frankly, he was moving so fast, getting all these things done, but he was just laying them out, scene after scene. It was super fun. I woke up like to a new illustration like every day for like 2 weeks.
Oh,
wow. It was like Christmas for me. It was like an advent calendar. Yeah, no, it's great. And we actually started on 4 and 5 already. So we did 3,000, and those sold out in like 2 days, I think, back in September.
So fast.
I was actually, it was funny. I was on tour. I was in Texas with Ryan Cahill when this was happening, and he was texting Matt the whole time. So I wasn't really where I could post about stuff, right? But they were just gone. And then, so we're doing more. They're doing 5,000 more, and they're going to put them up for sale in batches of 2,500. The first one's going to go up December 9. I think that'll go to subscribers first, and then to folks who signed the interest form. You can find the interest form on the Broken Binding Twitter account. I don't have the link handy, but they'll do 2,500 of those in December, and the other 2,500 will go in February. I think that's to gauge interest. Like if they don't sell through that 2,500, they might dial that second 2,500 down, maybe. But assuming things keep going the way they are, they'll do 2,500, 2,500. And then those will all ship. All 5,000 of those will ship in April. So pray for my pray for my wrist. I actually have to sign more now. I just signed 9,600 sheets for that first set, and I had like 8 days to do it because I was leaving for Texas. It was brutal. I watched all the Blade movies, and by watched I mean listened to them. My friend came over and we watched the Blade films while I was signing because I had not seen them before, and he thought that was illegal, so we did that. And then so I gotta do it again, and then later next year, probably closer to around now, we'll do 4 and 5, and then we'll do 6 and 7 the year after. So we're gonna do the whole series. Whether or not we continue to do 8,000 of all of them depends on how the orders go and stuff. Usually you expect people to drop out. We'll see what happens, because that's a big run. There's a big run though. 8,000 is a lot. It's as many as they did for Malazan. So I'm a little bit humbled and a little bit nervous about those numbers. But there were, by contrast, there are 200 copies of the normal hardcover book 2 in the UK.
Wow.
The only ones that got made for 2 and 3 in the UK were for Andorita's little short run that they do. And so there actually are way more special editions in hardcover of these books than there are normal ones, which I think is pretty funny.
It is.
Yeah, and then the Andorita ones will come next year. Those will be a little bit tricky, in the same way that the Diamond editions were a little bit tricky to get in on, because they've been doing my short story collections for a couple of years now, and the folks who bought into those will have dibs at those, basically simplifying. But if you want to look at them, you want to get in on it, maybe you can check out andoritabooks.co.uk. It's ANDERIDA books.co.uk. You can reach out to them. They've got contact form and say, hey, I'm interested. Can you put me on the list and stuff? That's all sort of done by email because they're pretty small. They're not a big operation like Broken Binding. Right?
I've let them know I am.
Yeah, but you send them an email, get on their newsletter. They have a Sun Eater little news tab because this is like their big project as far as news stuff goes. They do a lot of other things, but as far as designing the books themselves, it's Rob and me, right? And I'm super involved in the art direction on all of these. I did all the art briefs for all three publishers. Obviously, Diamond Editions literally was me and Steve, right? I did basically like everything on Diamond Edition. Like Steve and I were obsessing over fonts and, you know, layout and stuff. We did end up, I will say, the font on the Diamond Edition is too small. If anybody here has seen one, we're fixing that. It did not look too small on the computer screen. This was a problem. This is a new one for me, so that's my goof. We'll be fixing it. It's still readable, but it is not where I want it to be. So if anyone on here is like, Christopher, what the heck? What the heck me? That was my bad. We'll get them squared away. So
your readers are very forgiving, very passionate, and very okay as long as they have that book in their hand. Like, I think that's so cool. Like a few things. I want to get to a couple of things. I see some comments I want to get to.
Yeah.
First off, the queen of audiobooks sent a poem. Any hope of the short stories on audio?
Yeah, 100%. So,
oh yes,
yeah, we have not like formally started work on that. It's just that that will happen. So when Tales of Sun Eater 1 came out, I have three ebook only short story collections. Tales of Sun Eater 1, 2, 3. And when that came out, I decided to make it ebook only because it was shorter than my novella. And I felt bad charging like $15 for a paperback or something. Because it was so, to me, it was so small. So I figured, hey, I'll make it an ebook. We'll put it up for like a couple bucks. Maybe people who don't even do ebooks will read it on their phone with the app and it'll be okay, right? And then what we'll do is when I have enough short stories, because at the time I only had like 6 or 7 short stories done. It wasn't enough for a full collection, right? So I said, eventually I'll have enough and we'll put them all in one volume, maybe when the series is done. And that'll be its own thing. And we're getting close to that. So series is almost done. When that's done, we'll do a collection of all the short stories. Although now there's sort of like the second wave of short stories I'm doing with all these special editions. So there'll probably be 2 short story collections before I'm like done. So we'll do the first one, which will collect everything that's in Tales 1, 2, 3. I think a couple of the stories that'll be in Tales 4. There'll be a Tales 4 next year. And then maybe a couple originals as well. That'll all come out probably not next year, but the year after. It'll be close to finished, close to ready next year. It just depends on how we want to do it. I might have it come out sort of like a Diamond Edition, but not limited, because I won't. The reason the Diamond Editions are so limited is because I had a license, right? I could only print 1,000. Right,
from the publisher.
I have to lease my rights back from the publisher. Yeah, it's just a legal thing, right? Because when you sell a book to publisher,
a few different places now, right?
What's that?
Places. And with you is a couple different places now, right?
Oh yeah. No. It's I so with Diamond Edition, I leased from the U.S. publisher because I'm selling in the U.S. Right? If I like move to the U.K., I'd have to lease from them, right? Because when you sell a book to a publisher, you sell a license to the publisher. You don't sell the IP, right? Usually. You sell there. If you're writing, like you write a Star Wars book, right? Like you don't own that anymore. But like, you know, if you're writing your own thing, you sell it to Penguin Random House, right? You're selling them a license to print your book under conditions, right? And so you know, one of those conditions excluded my ability to make special editions, so I had to negotiate for the right to do that. But publishers don't want you to print infinity books because they're printing infinity books, right? Sure. That, like, you know, infringes on what you sold them. What was the money for, Christopher? And so, you know, you have to limit it. But if I don't sell them the short stories at all, I could just do my own version and you know.
And yeah, that speaks on your experience and something that I know I'm glad to know now, because I didn't, and I know other people too. That's kind of a part of it you don't really get to experience unless you're kind of in it, or if you talk about it, such as yourself.
Yeah, publishing is such an opaque business, and it's partly that on purpose, right? Partly publishing doesn't want everybody to understand how it works because they don't want everybody emailing them, right? You know, yeah. Well, you know, and also just like it's one of those places that like a lot of people want to get into, right? And if everybody like knows where to send the emails effectively, right? Like, you know, if someone, you know, it would just be a problem, right? Like, you know, they wouldn't be able to function. You could effectively cripple a publisher if you like publish the editor's like professional email somewhere, right? Like, you know, like here's Brandon Sanderson's here's his editor at Tor Books. Here's his professional email. Go, right? Yeah, like that would be a problem.
The last couple interviews that I'm really proud to have had were Man, I had to search, brother. I had Tad Williams on here a couple times.
I saw you did, yeah.
And-
I laughed. I clicked in, and he had that quote from the Library Ladder interview in his little descriptor, and I think that might be my fault. So I watched Bridge. I love Library Ladder. I watched his review, his Tad Williams video, and I sent it to Betsy Walheim, who is Tad's editor, because I thought it was a great video. I thought it was really insightful and just awesome. Like Bridger's he's such a just a brilliant guy. And Betsy took umbrage with some point, and so they went back and forth in the comments, and she must have told Tad about it. So I say Tad, I've met him once. I must have told Tad Williams about it. So I saw that, I was like, oh no, I got the booktube video to Tad Williams. Whoops. But I think that was me.
But that is so cool, though. Oh my gosh, to have that experience, man. But just like to find, like, where do I send this invite to? Where I searched for days, and I finally found that one. And just I think if you want to find it hard enough, you will. But yeah, you're right. I think that if everybody had this like knowledge, hey, I'll read this if you send it here. That you're right. It would overload. It would shut down. They kind of have to make it that way.
Yeah, it's deliberately obscure, right? Like it's bureaucratic, sure, but it's also like there's an element of like secret handshake wizard society kind of stuff to it, right? It's just, you gotta know like what what book on the shelf to pull out that's gonna like open the bookcase that leads down into whatever, right? And that's all right. There's a lot of publishing, like any industry, is personal connections and things too, right? So
it's also rewarding though. Like,
oh yeah, no, if you can figure it out, there's if it starts to work for you, then it is really cool, So
I agree.
Yeah, it's funny though that you mentioned like how hard it is to find stuff, because as an aside, one of the things I used to do is track down representation for old short stories from like dead and often obscure writers for collections. And it was like never clear like who the agent was, or like suddenly like you'd be talking to like someone's great grandson who's like, oh my gosh, really, you're gonna publish like Opa's work or something? Like, again, that's so cool, right? Or like I talked to like A.E. Van Vogt's wife, right, who's like 90 something, and she's like, man, I haven't thought about that story in like 50 years. Like, that's he would have gotten a kick out of this or something, right? And that's really cool, right?
It is.
The weird one, I can't remember what the guy's name was. There was this Irish writer. We were going to publish a bunch of his old books. We're trying to find his agent, and like I had to like email some like university in Ireland who had all of his papers, and like everything was so Celtic, like I couldn't possibly have stood a chance of pronouncing anything. I was like, I don't know what any of this means anymore, right? Please, someone, and that's cool. There's like an archaeological element to the job that I didn't anticipate when I started working as an editor,
and it's kind of like once you strike gold, right? Metaphorically, it's rewarding. It is, and it's funny too. Like multiple people, it's their wives' email. And which is so cool because the wives are oftentimes their go-to as far as scheduling things. And so, yeah, it's fun. Anybody that, wants to reach out to people, I think the courage it takes is the first part. Because I think that me reaching out to people like you or Tad Williams or John Gwynn or what have you, Scott Lynch, like he's not going to talk to me. Like he's writing Sun Eater. He's writing Gentlemen Bastards, or I think you have to get past that and just say, hey, we're all human. And then you go to the next.
Yeah, 100%. Almost like, and I have a hard time imagining that like anything worse would happen than a writer would just not answer the email, right? Like I've basically answered every email. That's,
You're very quick.
not always going to be possible. I'm like super on top of my email. Like if I have stuff piling up in there, if I can scroll, I'm upset about it. I need that to go away. So I clear as many emails as I can,
It's anxiety.
I just I'm constantly just scrambling to stay on top of this, whatever this is, right?
Right. That makes
you
so
know.
much sense. It does. Whatever this is, because it is a thing, right? And it's different for everybody. But
Yeah,
whatever
you
this
just gotta
is.
kind of ride the tiger, you know.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Shane is absolutely making one of the finest points ever, because I agree with him. I'm an audio with 4 children right now. Audiobooks are my thing.
yeah, what do you think?
Sim Bogosos. I love the way he says Bogosos. I don't know. Every time he says Bogosos, I'm just like, yeah, dude, get it. You know?
He's the best.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love Samuel. He's great.
So audio, he says they're awesome. He just finished Kingdom of Death. Christopher jumped to my top 3 authors. That's not surprising. All time already. That was very cool to meet him when he came to Dallas. Yes, he was there. Yes.
Yeah, that was a good time. Both of those signings, did 2 signings in Dallas with Ryan. They were both great. Yeah, I was saying then, right? The last time I'd done a tour, I was in California in 2019. So it was like right after book 2 came out. I had like 5 people at a store, maybe, and there were 2 other authors with me, Dave Butler and Chris Husberg. And so it was like a 1-to-1 kind of thing. And we were like, this is fun, but like, I don't know if the ROI really is worth it, guys. But now, you know, ROI might be worth it. I should probably do more of that. So,
man,
we'll
Dave
see.
Butler's a good dude. I took your advice and I had him on.
Yeah, he told me. He called me after and said he had a great time. Dave's
that
the
makes
man.
me feel good, dude.
He's
That really does.
Dave is the smartest guy I know. He's just absolute genius. Most underrated writer I know too. Witchy Eye is amazing. I can never recommend people read it enough. It's so good.
I said that exact same line to him. I said, look, any guy that Christopher tells me to read, I'm going to read it and I'm going to have you on. And I said, that's the reason we're talking.
Yeah, dude,
so that was so cool.
So awesome. He's the man. And he edited Disquiet Gods too.
What?
He edited Disquiet Gods.
Oh, he did. Wow.
He does some freelance editing for Bane, and when they brought me over there, he did it because he'd read at the time he read I think the first 2 of my books, then he read everything to catch up for the job. So couldn't have done it without him. So
that's so cool, man. Yeah, after kind of meeting him and meeting you and kind of getting to know you both, that's a very, very cool relationship to have.
He's one of my best friends.
That is so cool, man. Eddie says it's been a while. Christopher, any news on Sealston comic series after the main series is complete?
Yeah, this is Eddie. It's good to hear from you, man. It's been a minute for sure. So this is one of those projects that I've like floated as an idea at some point. And I guess Eddie hadn't forgotten about it. I would love to do it. I would love to do it, but I haven't like made any movement on it because the books have been increasingly eating all of my attention, right? Managing special editions and things. But I would love to do it because I've said before, like writing from a Sealson point of view is so daunting a prospect. People are like, you should do a Sealson novel. I'm like, I don't know that I could. I don't know that I could sustain it or would want to psychologically sustain it for 100,000 or 200,000 words. It's so I will say, and I won't say where, but I've done it twice now, and it's rough. Like it is not easy, and it is not fun. And I kind of found 2 different ways to do it. And you'll see them next year. But I've done it twice, and I definitely am not going to write a Sealson book. Like that's not happening. Like it just was way too hard, and I don't think it would have.
Oh my gosh!
Yes. I don't think it would have like broad spectrum appeal. So like it's sort of like a little thing. But I've said I think the way to do it, if I was going to do it, was as like a comic, because like so much of that could just be shown, and I don't have to talk about it, and that's a different beast, you know. So maybe. But Eddie, there's been no movement on it. I've had other things, unfortunately, occupying my attention. But I think it'd be cool. I think it'd be cool to do. It'd be grim, that's for sure. Finding a way to have it make a point that was worth reading about is really the hard part, right? Because like, you know, you don't want to just be miserable and like people, you know, there are some people who are like, I can't read Kings of Death, like it's, you know, torture porn or something, and it is not actually. I get real mad when people say that because it is actually deeply hopeful, and and not grim at all. Actually, it is quite bleak.
That's a first. I haven't heard that. I've
Yeah,
lost I've looked at a lot of reviews of your stuff, and I've never heard that.
it shows up every now and then. It's not a super common thing. Most people seem to get it, but and then like I get it. Like, man, it's tough, right? Like it was tough to write. But I don't want to. I don't want to write anything that like beats people down and like makes them feel small and miserable. Like that's not the note you want to. That's like finishing off a 9-course Michelin meal by literally handing someone a turd. Like you just don't want to. You don't want to do that to people, right? Like that's not the feeling you want someone walking away with. You don't want to.
Now, I'm not to book 6 yet, and I'm not even close. I'm like halfway through, and thankfully, I thank God for that every day. It's like I'm savoring this. I don't savor a lot of series, but I'm savoring this one. So I'm very baffled to hear, because as I read your prose, it's not something that I have a lot of time to stay on this one topic, such as like negativity or positivity. I am distracted with a lot of other things, like the characters and where they are at that moment, and if they're this far ahead of where they were when book 1 ended. And it's I don't ever see myself in one spot. So again, I'm not to book 6. And so I don't think that I can say 1000%, but I'm almost positive I will never think that, oh, this is torture porn.
No, it's not a super common critique, but it shows up, So.
And also, I think that it's brave talking about it as an author of all the different perspectives that you've received, because it gives an insight of itself. Like, hey, I had this experience with this works, and hearing other people's experience kind of, I don't know, add to the experience for me. I don't know if that makes sense, but negative review of something adds to the experience that I had that was 100% wonderful.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm a big comments reader, like for other things. Like I love reading comment sections even more than the article usually, because the thing is like people all live in their world, right? Like most people, right? And like those planets that they live on are not the Earth that I'm familiar with, and so visiting, other people's strange realities is often interesting to me, right? And you notice with any conversation, right? Like the thing I used to like get into internet fights like all the time, like as a teenager and stuff, right? Because I actually, like most of us, like my opinion is very shiny and wonderful and intelligent. Everybody else's is worthless.
Yeah.
And so like I would love to, I would love to fight with people. And I realized, so I started doing this thing where I would like read the comment section. It's like, how many people have already said the thing that I've said? And like, oh, 5 people have said the same thing. There's no reason at all for me to like wade in ever, right? I don't have to say anything. It's already been said, right? And that sort of diffused a lot of it. But what you realize, right, is like talking about reviews, is that like basically I'm not going to get a review at this point on Empire of Silence that's surprising, right? Like,
oh yes,
like I've already seen them, right? There's nothing anybody can ever say to me about that book, or really about any of them at this point, short of like a really personal like I was committing suicide, or like the day of, like that was my plan and I opened the book and I like that's meaningful, right?
Sure.
But like this book was stupid in chapter 17 because it made me mad, right? Like I've seen that actually 400 times. Like there's not a new thought that like is going to get contributed on Goodreads as far as the books. Like the book of like, like the 1,000, the typewriter generator has like output all the opinions that I'm probably going to see on the book, right? And so like nothing surprising, but what you notice are there patterns, right? And if you see a pattern recur over and over and people the same issue or the same bit of praise, you're like, oh, like that is that's useful, right? There's I think it was R.F. Kuang ran an article in the Guardian like last year or something, where she said like, I hate the numbers on Goodreads, right? Like I just want to read everybody's opinions. I'm the other way. I don't want to read anybody's opinions. I want to see the numbers, right? Like if most of the people like the book, right, then the book is good, right? It's good enough, right? And like Tolkien has negative reviews. All those people are dumb, but like but he has them, right? So it's fine, but but like looking at the trends that emerge and sort of factor analyzing, right, what the conversation is instead of looking at individual people, that's like way more valuable than
Yes.
looking at like any individual, to me as an artist anyway, than looking at any individual reaction. Of course, those individual reactions are like super great, especially when it's like a deeply meaningful thing. Like someone emailed me, he said that he reached out to his estranged brother because of Hadrian's relationship with Crispin, right, or lack
Ooh.
thereof. And I was like, that's amazing, right? Now that's not me. Like, I'm glad that you found the courage to do that, guy, right? And I'm glad that like the book helped you find the courage, right? But like, I didn't give that to you. That wasn't me, right? That was all you. But the fact that that happened is amazing. Like, that's way cooler than I liked this book or I hated this book or something like that.
That's an insight to a part of being an author that I think a lot of people appreciate. I know I do. And yeah, I can see how somebody would reach that kind of conclusion or potentially be in like your seat and kind of gain those what did you call them?
Factors.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
kind of those trends, those over and over. Hey, I've heard this, and that means that hey, I'm doing this well. Or if I've heard this 1,000 times, hey, maybe they've got something there. But those are the important things that I feel I would pay attention to if I was an author.
Yeah.
Just
Because like if
trends, that's it.
everybody has the same criticism of like the same of the thing you're doing over and over and over again, like maybe you should think about that, right? But if it's like one dude who like gets real bent out of shape because you didn't talk about like I don't know, like fuel cost or something,
Yeah.
right? Like that guy you can ignore, right? But like if everybody's like Christopher, maybe chapter 17 wasn't that good, you should be like, oh well, maybe it wasn't, right? Like what could I do differently? Like I have actually like made choices in subsequent books to adjust for criticism, right?
Wow.
I
Great
don't want to
display, man.
talk too specifically, but like someone will be like, "Why didn't you bring that up?" And I'm like, "That is a really good point, my guy." Like I've done that. Oh, I can give a funny one. Mark Lawrence actually, he did a review
Good
of
one
Empire
to
of
pick.
Silence, and he was not so sure why the ruins in Empire of Silence weren't like a big tourist destination. Like scientists would be all over those because they're so weird, right? And
Mhm.
so like I was writing book 3 at the time. I put a character named Lawrence into the book to ask that question to Velka, and Velka answered it, right? Like that's very pointed, right, and kind of cute.
That's cool, man.
But like he was right. Like maybe I could have said more about it, and like better late than never, right? No, I mean it worked in the scene and stuff, but
Look,
you
if
know.
Mark Lawrence texts me or emails me something, I may consider that too.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, 100%. Especially consider the source. Right now, that's like the time. That's a good example of like you should listen to one review actually, right?
That's so cool, dude.
Like that guy knows what he's doing. So
And he had the respect to actually say it, man. Like,
sure, yeah. I mean, he has a reputation for not pulling his punches too, right? So I thought the world
we're
of
on the
seeing
same
for that
wavelength,
review.
Chris,
So
man. I
yeah,
feel that. That's why I wanted you back, brother. I'm having so much fun.
yeah, man.
Matt, look, I'm a fan of his, and you know him as well, and he's a
Yeah,
fan
yeah,
of yours. We're both fans of his, I'm sure.
yeah,
Christopher,
yeah.
thanks for the recommendation on reading Vorkosigan. Lovely stuff. Lorian, Miles is really great character. I have to know what that means. There's an inside joke going on.
Yeah, so Vorkosigan Saga by Louis McMaster Bujold is one of my favorite science fiction series of all time. It's my favorite Bane series. It's the first one I read when I was working there, and it's like 17 books long. Started in '86, and it's one I think more Hugos than any other series.
Holy
Uh,
shit.
it's it was the first series to win best series Hugo, but I think there are like 5 books or stories in the series that have won. It's awesome. Lois is, in a certain sense, I think comparable to Robin Hobb. She's like the best character worker in science fiction. Period. She's the absolute, just a delight. The characters are so strong, and it's about a sort of czarist Russian kind of planet that got disconnected from the wormhole network and then reconnected after it had fallen back into like medieval norms, basically. And
Okay.
the first book is a romance between like a starship captain and the prime minister of this planet, right? And it's a romance novel. It's short, but it is also great, right? And then as the series goes on, it becomes about their kid Miles, who is like less than 4 feet tall and has brittle bone disease,
Ooh.
and is a genius. and he does not let any of this slow him down because he's the son of the prime minister. Like, he has to be a military officer, even though he is really not equipped for it. But he is a genius, and he is one of the inspirations for Lorien in the series. And he is that because Miles's character in anything I've ever read that I most identify with. I love Miles. I see way too much of myself in Miles. I think he's great just as a character. But I feel for him in a lot of ways.
Empathy is a big one. Like, if you can gain that through literature, man.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. Like, I can't recommend the books highly enough. They're so good. But Lorien is a little bit of a nod. Lorien has a different set of problems, but he is very short and he has a similar job. But Lorien is also as close to a self-insert, I think, as the books have as well in terms of his personality. Hadrian's a lot more melancholic than I am.
I feel like a dickhead reading that book because I'm 6'5". I'd be like, I don't know what the hell you guys are talking about.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's funny, right? You're talking about Dave Butler. He's like 7 feet tall.
No way.
And I'm like 5'7".
Okay.
On a good day. So, like, I'm shorter than Tom Cruise, right? And so we hang out with Dave. I'm always like, I feel like Bilbo Baggins. But it's not so much the height thing with Miles I identify with. It's just his stubbornness. Yeah, and it's hard to really pin down. But yeah. So anyway, he's sort of a Lorien is derived from Miles in a lot of ways. He's still a different guy, right? But there was some starting there, and part of the problem is that I can never get away from T.E. Lawrence, right? Like, Hadrian is partly based on Lawrence, and so is Lorien to an extent, but like, so is Miles' work. Because again, if you talk to Lois, like, she'll tell you he's based on Lawrence, so there's no getting away from Lawrence of Arabia. Is a big part of the problem there too. But I love those books. I can't recommend them highly enough. They're also like really short. So like,
so you just said Lawrence of Arabia, right?
Yeah.
So what literature in particular inspired you, and where did you find Lawrence of Arabia? Because I'm interested. I would like to read those books.
Yeah. So, I mean, the road to Lawrence for me was through Dune, right? Speaking of characters inspired by T.E. Lawrence, right? Paul Atreides is one, right?
Okay.
And so, among other things, right? Paul is also based on John Carter from Princess of Mars, so he's really, Paul's like a deconstruction of that kind of science fiction hero, right? But Lawrence is that, right, too, because Lawrence, my inroad to Lawrence was with the Peter Lean film, right, which is like David Lean film. Sorry, like, Peter O'Toole is the actor, David Lean is the director. The David Lean film, which is like the greatest movie ever made, right? If you've never seen it, like,
what is it again?
Lawrence of Arabia from the 60s.
I haven't seen it. No.
Oh, dude, absolute masterpiece. They don't make movies like that anymore. It's one of those big, like, 1,000 extras, like, historical Hollywood films, right? Peter O'Toole plays Lawrence. Alec Guinness plays King Faisal of Arabia. Controversially, he is in makeup, right? He is great, but he is in makeup. But it was the 60s. It was a different time. But it's interesting, right? Because it's about the British leveraging the Arab Bedouins to fight the Turks during World War I, right? Which is a true story. They did this, right? They're blowing up rail lines to like destabilize the Ottoman Empire. Yes, the eastern front of World War I, right? And Lawrence was kind of a nerd, right? He was like a history guy. He had like a PhD in, I think, like Crusade studies or something like that, right? And he was tooling all over the Holy Land, and he knew the Arabs and stuff like this, and so he was brought in sort of to help embed British interests during the war and to work with the Arabs, and it partly led to the sort of redistricting, the sort of creation of the modern Middle East, right, in terms of geopolitics and stuff like that. And the French and the British basically carved up that whole region. They created all the modern states, and they did this without real regard to like what the native sort of sensibilities were in terms of tribe and relationships and things like that. Really made a hash of it. And so you can see in Lawrence, right? Sort of an echo of Paul, right? Paul comes in and like he doesn't really belong to the Fremen, right? But they welcome him in and he kind of makes a hash of their lives, right? And by Children of Dune, right, you know, he's destroyed Fremen culture, right? Mostly by bringing water to the planet and making Arrakis not suck, right? Which is kind of mixed signaling, I think, on Frank's part. But but there's an inspiration there, and you see that sort of, and he's like a very sort of, he's like a very flamboyant kind of character, right? Like he's got a lot of one-liners, right? And he was like that in real life, right? And so he's like a really good inspiration for like a character. He's making a character, right? You got this like very shiny, you know, like very blue-eyed, right? Like gold-haired Englishman running around Arabia, right? Quoting poetry and getting into arguments with Arab kings and dropping one-liners like, you know, like he's the main character, right? Which he kind of was, right? He certainly acted like it, but he also wrote a book called Seven Pillars of Wisdom. So if you want to like actually just read the real T.E. Lawrence's book about this stuff, you can. It is also full of one-liners and is awesome. It's not a novel. It's like his thoughts and stuff. It's a philosophy book, but it's super cool.
I'm a history nerd, dude, and Lawrence of Arabia I've heard a million times, and just I know nothing.
Yeah, the film is obviously fictionalized to like a great degree, but it is a great film, right? And Lawrence's life is also probably largely fictionalized. There's a lot of evidence to suggest that he was way deeper in British intelligence than we think, because this is also, you know, he's wrapped up in, you know, like the Great Game, right, from the 19th, 20th century, where the Brits and the Russians are fighting over Asia, right? You know, same sort of struggles we inherited in the Cold War, right? We were in Afghanistan fighting the Soviets because the British had been in Afghanistan fighting the Russians, right? And they were, you know, all, like the British Empire and the Russian Empire were trying to figure out who was going to get Kazakhstan, right? And, you know, all this stuff, right? So like Lawrence was involved in a lot of that intelligence stuff. So like a lot of his stories don't add up, and it's probably because he was way deeper in like MI5, MI6 stuff than, you know, we still know today, you know? So he's an interesting character.
Thought though keeps the intrigue.
Yeah, exactly. Right. You know, so
I have to say, we were right before we went into Lawrence of Arabia. I have to make sure to say it because, man, Bane had you. I know you're with Daw.
Yeah.
Roy Correa.
Oh yeah. Larry's
love him. I love everything about him. Shoot me if you want. Love Larry Correa.
I would never shoot anybody. So no, Larry's a great guy. I've known Larry for years.
You know, nice dude. He's a nice dude ever.
Yeah, no, he's 100% that uncle on the internet, right? Like, you know, love him or hate him, he's that guy. But you know, Larry is of all the bigger writers that I've met, Larry is possibly the most generous to. Larry is the most generous to smaller writers of any of the bigger names that I've met. Jim Butcher has been really great to me. A couple times I met him. When I was at a Daw dinner, Chad Williams was the only one of the big guys who came around and shook all the new kids' hands, and I thought that was really cool. But Larry, I mean, Larry helped me get my start, man. I was like 2 months in. Empire had done okay on launch, but it wasn't going anywhere. And Larry put the word out, and I sold like 500 copies because of Larry, like 2 months in, like in one day, which was huge, you know. And like I still have readers from that bump that talk to me, you know. And
you know how I got him on the channel? I said, you know, I know that Christopher is in the same publisher, and he's like, look, any fan of Christopher's is a fan that I can talk with. So I used you as a bridge there, and he found that very respectful.
Yeah, no, Larry's just
a relationship.
He's the nicest guy. Yeah, no, he's always been really supportive of me, which is also great, you know.
Another one, Howard Andrew Jones. I know he's going through a rough time. I don't know the updated anything about him, but another Bane writer who blew my mind. First Sword and Sorcery series ever.
Yeah. Oh, dude, he is really good. Yeah, I don't know Howard super well. We had one conversation, and I was hoping to get to know him better because, of course, I'm a big Rome guy, and he's a big Carthage guy. So we were gonna have to have words, you know.
Yeah.
Hannibal's cool, I get it, dude, but the Carthaginians, you're gonna throw in with the whole lot of them. All right, those baby killers, really? Howard, come on. But no, man, those Handlebar books are awesome.
Oh,
Yeah,
I was like, what's Sword and Sorcery? And he's like, I had a buddy send me his book, book 1 and book 2 signed, and I was like, man, I had no idea this was so much fun.
yeah,
Just
yeah. Well,
instant.
people, Sword and Sorcery gets a bad rap, right? People are quick to turn up their noses. You know, they're like Conan, right? And they just like
Yeah.
look at the Frazetta art, right? And they're like, this is for 14-year-olds, right? And like, actually, the stories aren't though. You know,
He does the
Conan.
right thing, but he does shitty things to get to the right thing. But at the end of the day, he does it for the right people, and you empathize with him.
Yeah.
Hannibal
Oh,
was
dude,
awesome.
I love Howard, Howard Jones, but I love uh, Robert E. Howard. Speaking of people I empathize with a lot, you know, I just became older than he ever was this year, and I had to sit and think about that.
Did not know that. Did
He
not know
killed
he died
himself.
young.
He killed himself when he was 30. Yeah.
Wow.
And yeah, and I think about that a lot actually.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's crazy, man.
Yeah,
I would
I'm reading. Mark Finn wrote a biography of Howard, which is what I'm slowly reading right now. It's on my nightstand, called Blood and Thunder, and it's about how like deeply Texan that dude was, right? Like his thesis basically is like he should be on the list of great Texas writers, right? Like he should be right up there, you know, with all I can't remember. I'm not a Texan, so I don't know who the great Texas writers are, right?
Sure.
You know, but the only one I'm think of is Fehrenbach, and he's a historian, right?
That's
But
so cool, man.
yeah, no, it's super cool. But I love Howard, man. He's
I love that. And it's cool because you kind of, you not only know these people that inspire me a lot, but man, just kind of the personal talk too is that you've had with them is very, very cool. Speaking of which, William Hastings, I specifically sent him a message. I said, hey, I'm talking with your man Christopher Ruocchio. I want some questions from you because I can tell you're a big fan. So
he's my Padawan, actually. I have not talked to you in a while, William. Where have you been? I haven't really talked to William since I left Twitter, which is years and years ago. I quit before it was cool.
he's still there
You know,
representing, man.
yeah, awesome. You
So
know,
make sure to ask him about St. George and Constantine. I don't have any clue what the hell he's talking about, so I'd love to know.
oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. So Constantine, obviously, emperor, right? Roman emperor, converts to
Okay,
Christianity
yeah.
on his deathbed. Yeah. Legalized Christianity, did not make it to state religion. People confuse those things. But he was around during the reign of Diocletian, who was probably the most fervid persecutor of Christians of all the Roman emperors, right? Nero, maybe notwithstanding. Diocletian really tried hard to wipe us out.
Okay.
And Saint George was, according to legend, was one of Diocletian's praetorians, right? One of his bodyguards. And when he found out that George was praetorian, he sent prostitutes to try and get George to go with them, right, to sort of break him of his Christianity, right? And George doesn't mess with that, right? He sends them away. Converted is the legend, right? And so Diocletian has to kill George, right? And so I have had this idea that it would be really cool, like if I wanted to write like a real heavy metal kind of Christian lit story, to talk about George's death being the thing that galvanizes Constantine to convert, right? I guess it's like the historicity of all this is like pretty questionable, right? George is a very mythic figure, right? Slays a dragon, right? Are there dragons? Yes, but not the way people think.
Sure.
Certainly not literally, unless you're counting Komodo, right? But there's like a really cool story idea there, and that was a thing I was knocking around a few years ago. I hadn't thought about that in a while, partly because Jonathan Pageau like kind of did this. He did a graphic novel about Saint Christopher. Saint Christopher in the Eastern traditions is like a werewolf, kind of. He like is a wolf man, and like finds religion, and like that's kind of cool. Like this is a folktale, right?
Yeah.
And so he did a graphic novel about that, and St. George was in it, and I was like, it's too close to what I wanted to do. So
That's cool. I was a little unaware of I was like, okay, St. George and Constantine. As you start to put him in a place and a time, I have small recognition from my history classes. I need to dive deeper into that to gain an understanding. But that is the best part for me. Like, okay, I have somewhere where I can focus this nerd attention at, right? Because we always need that focal point. At least I do. And I know so many other people. It's like, where can I learn next? And that's so fun for me.
Oh yeah, no, I'm the same way, man. I've been on a real like medieval lit kick, just sort of not reading it, but reading about it, and just like all the wacky stuff that like nobody reads about anymore, Orlando Furioso, right? Like it was a Roland story by this Italian guy, and you know, people read it obviously, like, you know, if you're a classic guy, you read about this, but like there's this medieval story where Sir Roland, right, you know, one of Charlemagne's knights, like he goes to the moon at one point, and like, there's like a lady knight. There's like a lady knight in this medieval story, right? Like people think that doesn't exist, but it does, right? This like, Bradamante, right? Like you haven't heard of her, but she was like a very popular like superhero, basically, to put it tritely, in like the like medieval consciousness, right? Like
That is
there are
so
these
cool.
characters people have, and we think that this doesn't exist because your teachers lied to you because they didn't bother to
They
read
did,
it,
dude.
you know?
If they didn't even give me like the first 10% of all the shit that I'm interested in.
Yeah, like did you know, like for example, that the most like important primary source we have for Crusades history is a lady?
Wow, no, I didn't.
Like, yeah, they just tell you that women weren't allowed to write, and actually they were. Right? There is an enormous number of like very important women writers from the Middle Ages that we just pretend don't exist. And Anna Komnena, who's the princess of the Byzantine Empire in 1099, is like our best historian on the First Crusade. She was on the ground and she like met those dudes, right? You know, and like you can actually read her full works like still, right? You know, and she wrote a biography of her dad too, the emperor. You know, like you can't ask for a better source, right? Or a more biased one, right? You know, but she was there.
Yeah,
so
that's a gem that it's so fun to uncover, because you're right. We aren't given this like full picture.
And it's hard, right? Like I don't mean to like knock teachers too hard, right? Because it's like too much. There's too much to cover, right? You know,
there is, and I think that it takes that personal drive to want to know more. It's like, will we ever know exactly what it was like for these people at that time? No, but to uncover the truth, I feel like is sometime a voyage we all have to take. For me, a lot of it, I think, was focused for like World War II. Some of the stuff, like I love World War II history, so I think that's where I had a focal point at first, and now just getting older, I want to get into Roman history. And
you know, I'm laughing. If you heard the joke, right? It's like every boy when he becomes 14, he's assigned World War II or the Roman Empire.
Yes,
you know, that's why I was laughing. You got assigned World War II. The joke it still holds true.
It is, and I'll tell you, it was so intriguing. I remember my first airplane ride. There was a Time magazine, one of the big ones, like huge, and it was right there at the airport. So I grabbed it, and ever since then, I was just into it. I feel like I've had my dose, and it's on to other things, and it's so fun. So I love hearing these inspirations that you have and other people have as well.
Yeah, man.
So William, I want to get to your questions as well. So another question is there any one character, maybe two, that you would consider the most fun to write, and why?
Most fun is hard to say, right? Lorien is super fun because there are very few characters who even try to be funny in the series. He and Polino both try to be funny, and so that is that's nice, just for a sort of tonal contrast. But there's like fun, challenging, like writing any of like the big sort of like superhuman characters, like Brethren or the Quiet or something like that. That's fun in like a I want to pull my hair out kind of way, you know?
Okay.
But then like I actually, what's that?
What does the Painted Man look like to you? I have to know. The Painted Man was so fun for me, dude. I know it was a short, like at the beginning of this book, The Howling Dark. I am obsessed with the Painted Man for some reason.
Yeah, that really surprised me because you're not alone. I was like, this is a throwaway character, and and people are like, this guy, like people have like been trying to figure out if there's another one hiding somewhere, you know. It's like, is there another shapeshifter? Like, is he under this rock? You know. He looks, I mean, he looks sort of like Robert Carlyle in the Aragon movie, I think.
Okay.
A little bit. You know, not that the Aragon movie is good, but Robert Carlyle is good. Actually, that movie's cast is like, how that movie is bad. Like, it's. I mean, oof, it's so unfortunate. You got like everybody in that is awesome, but not in that movie. But yeah, you could also like, he's like the Joker with red hair, right, or something.
Yes.
Right? Like, he's got a little bit of that going on for sure too.
He's fucking nuts.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's like but then you have to like melt him, right, a little bit. He's like not all there, right, because he's a shapeshifter. You know, he's gotta put his face on. So
I don't know what it was, and I feel like now I know, coming from you, I'm not alone. But for some reason, coming to that point, and it's at the beginning of book 2, and I'm not going to say anything other than that. But the Painted Man, he grabbed me. I don't know why, but he did. I do know why. He's
sort of the Cheshire Cat too, right? Like, you know, he's got the smile. I was thinking about this earlier, because it was I'm working on some edits for Howling Dark for the Diamond Edition, so the Painted Man came up. He's kind of the Cheshire Cat character, right? Because like everything after him like is progressively weirder, right? Like in a certain sense, book 2's got a descent into Wonderland kind of thing. Only it's like evil cyberpunk Wonderland, right? Like, Hadrian is not in Kansas anymore, to mix my metaphors. By the end of that book, like the galaxy is a very different place from the let's say Dune copy that I had tricked you all into thinking you were in for. So,
dude, yeah, John Malkovich would play that character pretty well, I think.
He was in the Aragon movie, I think is what William's on about.
I didn't know that, but I think he would play the Painted well. He plays a good. If you've ever watched Con Air. Like,
sure. No,
crazy good nuts, dude.
He's so good. He's one of the best. No.
That's cool, man. It's like Father that I get into this series. It's cool to talk to you, the author, man, because all of these fun little pieces start to come out, and it makes so much sense to me.
Yeah. Man.
Number 2 is any entry, perhaps all of them in the Sun Eater, where you feel the book has an identifiable theme distinct from the others.
So going into the books, not so much about theme, but in terms of, let's say, subgenre, right? I had this sense that I wanted to like change the dials a little bit. So I know Cena hasn't gotten that far in yet here. Just saying, like, you know, we're telling too much about book 2, but book 2's got a bit of a cyberpunk thing to it, whereas book 3 is like more of a political thriller. Book 4 has got some dystopian cosmic horror stuff going on. 5 doesn't really have its own identity. It starts to break down at this point because 5 was supposed to be part of book 4. So it kind of, that book got split on me. So I didn't get to do this experiment anymore. And then by that point, like book 6 and book 7, just they're very Sun Eater, right? Like the mix is very established. So I wanted to like sort of give a different vibe, right? I always do this thing too where like there's a big time jump, and you know, so like I think of the characters as like different people because we haven't seen them actually in a while, and so like there's a very clear question of like I said, like setting all the knobs and things. But as far as theme goes, it's hard to really say because I think the books all have a lot of themes. It just depends on like what we're talking about.
Yeah, dude. I feel like, you know, I'm only, like I said, I'm not done with what you have out so far, and already I can understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
But I think that's a wonderful take, William, and I'm glad that you asked the question. There is, let me see here real quick. Maybe I'll ask that at the end here. I can't really, I copied and pasted it. I'll get to it maybe at the end, but we're towards the end now.
Yeah.
Because I know you got a baby girl, and so do I.
Yeah. Well, she's asleep. We're cool. We got time.
Okay, wonderful. So maybe let's get to this. What is, I know this is a very broad question. We've talked about the special editions. We know you're at book 6. Book 7's being written. You're doing the special editions again. So what is kind of happening now and what's to come? Kind of what does it look like for you?
Yeah, so the next few months look like dragging myself over sharp rocks to finish this book. Not to put it too dramatically, but it is kicking my butt. But I need to get it done by about the end of February, preferably the end of January, if I'm going to get it edited and out to you all in time to come out next year. And that
Okay.
is my goal. My goal is to have it out around now next year, October, November. And to do that, I need to have it to the copy editor by the end of June, which means I need to have all the major revisions out of the way before that, which means January, February would be ideal. I got a
Okay.
little wiggle room on that, but not too much because it depends on how much editing is going to get done, and there is going to be some editing because I need to cut it down because it's already the longest book in the series. I just passed Disquiet Gods today. I passed the original draft of Disquiet Gods today, which is 318,000 words.
Okay, 318. That's a big
Yeah,
boy.
it is very long. Is my spreadsheet is guessing 410 at the moment,
Okay.
which is way, way, way too long. Like I told I saw my middle school English teacher a couple weeks ago, and I told her I was pushing Russian novel length. And she was like, "That is not good." And I was like, "Yes, it is. It is too long." So we're gonna try to cut it down once it's done, and that is a process. So, although it's easier to cut than add, it's easier to cut than add. But
Man,
yeah,
William says
go
a
ahead.
series of this magnitude being wrapped up cleanly in less than 10 years is wild. Millions and millions of words. Yeah, dude.
Yeah, it's about 2 million words. It's about 2 million. So it'll
People,
probably be a little bit less.
a million words alone. Let's just keep it at one. Look, measure a tic tac and then add a million of those, and you'll probably be around the moon and back. A million words is a lot.
It's a lot. It is. But I do about 2,000 a
Beautiful,
day,
bro.
and you can get there. It's consistency. It's like anything, right? The thing that separates the people who do it from the people who haven't is just showing up, right?
And you're doing it.
And it doesn't matter if you do 200 words a day or 2,000, right? 2,000 is it's a pretty sedate pace, right? Like I know dudes who can write 6 in a day, and I'm very jealous.
6,000?
That is some mutant freak speed. I'm gonna be honest with you. Like that's pretty crazy. That's like 80 Stephen King speed. But
Okay.
yeah, I'm not saying, but like seeing us over here writing 600 words and listening, I can't do that. Like I can barely listen to music and write.
Oh no, yeah, it's got to be
So
like
you know,
a focused moment. That's how I am. Now I'll get through
yeah,
some
no, I
audiobooks
gotta be
maybe if I'm
here.
cleaning, but not writing.
Yeah. Oh no, I can't do anything else if I'm writing. Maybe I can listen to music as long as no one's singing.
Yeah,
Maybe.
like the lyrics are not
Uh,
there. It's just kind of like the Lord of the Rings kind of in the background. That's how
yeah,
I am.
the Lord of the Rings soundtrack does make the rounds. That makes the rounds.
Heck yeah.
A lot of video game soundtracks, but
Ooh, what would you recommend?
it's uh s- uh so what have I been listening to? Because I've been listening to Lost Odyssey, which was on the Xbox
Mm,
360, which is a Nobuo Uematsu score. I listened to the Bat and Kaito soundtrack, which was on the GameCube. Those are by Sakuraba, who's been around. Those are like the two sort of like those are like two big Japanese video game composers from back in the day. I've been playing Metaphor, the Atlas game, which is pretty good. It's a little silly, but the
okay.
soundtrack is very cool.
Ooh,
They got like a Buddhist priest to do like the lead vocals for it, and it's like all
no.
like, dude, it is wild. Like it is really really cool. Because he's not
Man.
really doing Buddhist chanting precisely, but you can like tell that's like what he is, right? It's like a little modern. It's very cool soundtrack. Nothing like
Man,
it.
there's some like traditional throat singers that are mixing it with rave now. That sounds absolutely so cool.
Yeah, I've
Uh,
heard the Who, obviously the metal band, right? That does
yeah,
some
the
of the
Who's
throat singing.
gangster,
Yeah, yeah,
man.
they're
Oh,
cool. They're cool. I'm a big metal guy, but I can't listen to it and write. Like I know all the words to basically every Dio song, so I'm out. Like I can't listen to that and work. Like that's not happening.
I get it.
You know,
That's so badass, dude. I'll tell you what. This has been so fun, and for a couple reasons. I think this chat, and I'm just I always go back over the chat after I'm almost done with it. It's like the first one was so kind of formal for me because it was my first time talking with you. This has been fun because we're familiar with one another and we're talking the ins and outs of different kind of scenes, different influences. And I just wanted to let you know, Chris, this has been so incredibly fun, man.
Yeah, no, likewise. No, it's been good.
And I'm getting into book 3. This interview was like the initiation into book 3. And I'm just I'm so excited, man. I just want to let you know that, and so many other people that I love to hear talk about your work, the ambition that you have, the work ethic that I see you put in, and the love for your readers that I see you acknowledge is something that's truly special, something that I see and so many others do as well. So, man, just thank you for letting me come and pick your brain for a little bit and just shoot the shit.
Yeah, well, gosh, man, thanks for having me on. This believe me, this is as helpful for me as it is, for the channel, right? Like, got to get out to readers. So, it's my pleasure, really.
I promise that as long as it's up to me asking you, this won't be the last time. I enjoy talking with you. Everybody that was here live too, man, you guys had excellent questions, excellent topics, excellent thoughts. It's so freaking fun to see you guys over there in the chat. So let's see, any places specifically that you would put some emphasis on? I did want to, and speaking of which, I wanted to make one. So being a part of Broken Binding, and this is the only one I can speak on because it's the only one I'm a part of. The Broken Binding, when they send that interest list to you, if they do, like, or if you hear us speaking of it, like, find it, because tier 1 subscribers will get that first shot at, purchasing said books. Then tier 2, which is what I'm a part of, will get the next shot, which is almost guaranteed. And then the interest list will get that next one, correct?
Yeah, they'll go ahead of general sale. And I think most of the subscribers who wanted it had it. So like if you're on that interest list and you'll get a really good shot at the Broken Binding this time around.
Yes, like I said, that's the only one I know of. So if the Broken Binding has an interest list and you want the series they're speaking of, particularly the Sun Eater, which I know a lot of people were pissed when I was like, man, I'm so excited to get this. They're like, oh, it's sold out. Well, when they put that general sale out, they had 50 copies. Well, 53 book copies.
Sets, yeah.
50 sets left. And from what I understand, there were people, I know a couple people on my list that were like, man, I couldn't order it fast enough. Like it was just gone.
Yeah,
so
it wasn't mechanically possible. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Get in that general or get in that interest list. Make sure you do that. You heard it first here from Chris himself.
Yep.
So
yeah, it's on their Twitter page, their X page. I know they posted it there. You might have to scroll a bit because they've got all sorts of stuff going on. So that'd be the way to do it. I think it might be on my Facebook page too. You might not have to scroll quite as far on there, but I think I posted it.
I've got Chris's links below in the description. He does a fabulous job because I get the emails myself of what's going on with his Patreon, what's going on with his the interest list for his books as far as Broken Binding, and also I don't remember their name, but I reached out to him. What was the last one?
Sorry, I was reading.
Andrea.
Anderida, yeah, Anderida. We missed a super chat. I was going back for it. Anderidabooks.co.uk. I reach out to them if you want to see. A lot of those books are going to be spoken for because they have to give it to prior customers because they'll match, right? You've been buying the special editions of the short stories. They want to make sure you got number 37. You got the first crack at 37, right? Which is pretty standard practice for special editions that got numbers. We did the same thing with diamond editions. We're hopeful that we'll be able to print more diamond editions in the future, but it might be a couple of years. We don't want to compete with the broken binding. We're gonna step back, right? We've got everybody locked in who did the first set, but we don't want to push. Give broken binding some space. Give Andoritis some space too. And we'll go from there. But
yeah, get in that interest form. And this is a personal question because I saw that there were hardbacks signed from you of the in between the novellas.
Yes.
Are those available at all, or will
the hardcovers from the hardcover ones? Those, they might do a reprint of those. They just did a second printing of those. But there's no license. There's no limitation on it. Thing with Endorita is they have to do pretty small batch because they're a pretty small outfit.
Okay.
It's just Rob and his wife Ruth. And it's expensive, especially the quality level he's producing. Like the materials are expensive.
Yeah, they look nice, man.
Yeah, they're like cloth bound. They're like really, really, like Rob does just such a meticulous, beautiful job. I mean, I had someone point out like his dust jackets are like a millimeter shorter than the cover boards, right? So they never get pinched, right? And like don't notice it. I didn't notice it until I had someone point it out, and I was like, that's some classy stuff, right? But as a consequence, like they're very expensive. Like, so if you go for him to produce, right? He can't print 5,000 of them at once because it would cost more money to do that than he has liquid.
Sure.
I think he's a smaller business, right? You can't do at scale, right? But we'll maybe do a third batch of those short story novella combos eventually.
Okay.
But we're gonna get to the main books. But yeah, just stay on the newsletter. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Sun Eater Books, and I'll let everybody know. I'm pretty good about that. As soon as I know, probably say stuff too early. Frankly, people are asking me about comic books that I haven't even thought about yet. So
hey,
should probably keep my mouth shut.
His YouTube channel, guys, when he does his weekly updates, Christopher Ruocchio here does his weekly updates. It's just absolutely bonkers. So go subscribe if you're not. I'm sure you are, but if you're not, go subscribe. Also, all the links that he's speaking of, if it's not below now, I promise whatever we've talked about, it will be right after. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, guys that were here live, asking your questions, being here. Wonderful time. I've had a blast, and I'm looking forward to next time. Y'all have a wonderful night. Chris, man, go tell the family thank you for letting me borrow you for a little bit.
Yeah, you bet, man. You bet.
All right, guys. Y'all have a wonderful night. Like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff.